Hey guys, I'm going to be talking about autofocus on the Panasonic LUMIX GH6 today. This was something I didn't have much time to cover when I was doing my initial review, so I'm going to do this video for you now, which is going to exclusively talk about AF. I headed to one of our shoots for an online masterclass we have coming out soon on how to shoot video for weddings, which you'll be able to find a link in the description for. But I basically used this as an opportunity to go where there's already a shoot going on so I can test out the AF. Now, Panasonic are still using the DFD contrast-based autofocus detection system, which we've seen in some of the previous models, although this system's been greatly upgraded from the previous GH5 generation. The old generation used to have 225 contrast detection points, whereas now it has 315, so there's quite a big improvement there. And Panasonic have also told me that they've greatly improved the area of focus. Now, unfortunately, they didn't give me any official numbers on that, but they said it is greatly improved than the previous generation. So if you're moving around the frame a lot, or you're perhaps trying to focus on something that is at the edge of the screen, you should see much better performance in the GH6 than any of the GH5s. Another reason you'd expect to see the GH6 perform better than the previous generation is that there's a new processing engine in the camera. And because of the way that contrast detect AF works, basically the better the processor, the more power your camera has, the better the AF is going to perform. So I'd expect it to be actually considerably better than the previous generation, and in my testing, I found that to be true. In terms of the settings and the controls that you have over the AF, there's certain detection modes. So you've got face detection, you've got eye detection, and there is human and animal detection in there as well. You also can, of course, control the speed of the autofocus, so essentially how fast it focus racks. And there's a focus limiter on there, so if you basically want to make sure that it's not just going to go and focus on something way behind you, then you can chuck your focus limiter on there and it will stop that from happening. But let's kick straight into the test. So first I started testing by just setting the camera on a tripod and moving around the image, hopping in and out, moving forwards and backwards, just to see how the camera performed. I shot all of this demo footage on either the Leica 10-25 f1.7 or the 25-50 f1.7 Leica as well. And I shot it all at f1.7, which obviously is quite a harsh test for an autofocus system because it's probably a little bit easier if there's slightly less depth of field. So I wasn't necessarily kind to the camera when I tested it. I tried these in a range of resolutions and a range of frame rates, and I actually found that that performed really well. Once my face was locked on and in the image, it didn't really miss a beat. It would actually lock on, and if I was walking directly towards the camera, it would hold my face, which is really good and actually a significant improvement on the previous generation. I also tried some more vloggy style AF tests just to see how it performed, because I think this camera would be really good for vloggers. So I just had it in my hand, just like flipped the screen around, just turned on face detect, and again, it performed really well. There wasn't a single moment in this vlog test that I did where it didn't lock onto my face really accurately and nicely. From doing these tests, I learned that actually I'd be really comfortable using the AF when filming myself, as long as the scene isn't too congested, because obviously it's contrast-based AF, so the more contrasty the scene is better. So perhaps if I was wearing an exact camo of this wall right now, then I think the AF might struggle. But in general, I think I'd be really comfortable when filming myself to be using the AF, which I'm actually doing now. After I'd done some of these self-shot tests, what I did is I just basically filmed handheld and shot some BTS of the shoot that was going on. But while I was shooting this BTS, obviously I had the AF performance at the front of my mind. So what I was doing a lot was I'd hold it on somebody's face, I'd pan across to somebody else's face and basically see how quickly it locked on, whether it did lock on, and how it performed. Now, this is the bit that was a little bit inconsistent. Like, generally speaking, I found it to be really good. I would hold on one person's face, I'd move to the other person's face, and it would snap to it really quickly, really reliably, and really nicely. But it wasn't 100% consistent when I was doing this. Sometimes I'd pan over from somebody's face to another and it would take a little while to find that focus, or sometimes it actually wouldn't focus it at all. Now, I had it set to face detect, so that is really what it should be doing. So I would still say that probably when I was doing this, it was kind of doing what I wanted it to be doing, maybe around 80% of the time. So it wasn't 100%, but I mean, you know, you're not always going to expect 100% from a camera. Now, obviously this isn't bad, and if we remember, we compare it to some of the older cameras, it's way, way better, because some of the older cameras, they were unreliable, they would hunt, and personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable relying on them in a shooting situation. Now, this one I do feel a little bit differently about. I think if I'm just filming one person, perhaps I'm running and gunning and sort of filming somebody like I often do, I'd be totally happy using the AF, and actually I think I could rely on it and I'd feel confident about the fact that I know it's going to do the job I want it to do. But if I'm shooting something that is a bit less linear, it's a bit less like I don't really know what I'm going to be filming, perhaps let's say documentary, where I might be quickly panning from one face to another, or I might go from somebody's face that I'm filming to then want to get a bit of B-roll from some form of inanimate object, then I'm not exactly sure how it's going to perform. So I think in those kind of situations where you were documentary filming and you really don't know what's going to happen at any given moment and you want the freedom to do it really quickly, personally, I would choose to shoot in manual because I think I'll probably get better results from using manual focus. If it was phase detect, do we think it would be a little bit better? Potentially, yes. Probably some of the other phase detection systems, we have generally found that to be a more reliable and more consistent way of getting autofocus. But after my testing, in general, I found that I think this is by far the best autofocus system that Panasonic have ever released. I hope you've enjoyed my overview of the AF performance on the Panasonic LUMIX GH6. If you want to find my full review, you can find a link to it in the top right hand corner of the screen, which includes the test footage that you're seeing now. But this isn't the last of the content we have coming out on the Panasonic LUMIX GH6, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to see all of our upcoming content, and thank you very much for watching the latest video from Wex Photo Video.